Morning or afternoon or evening, or whatever time it is that you're listening to this. I thought I would create a video for people who struggle with my fantasy league, MFL, and just give them a bit of an overview as to get it set up so that you get the best experience possible. So what I've done here is I'll do two videos, one for the desktop version, and I'll also do some things with the apps mobile version. I'll record those and load them up as well. So when it comes to MFL, a lot of people complain about where they can't find stuff, can't find what they need to do, and getting drafts done quickly, like being able to pre-draft or being able to go ahead and actually make a selection when they're on the clock. There's a few things I'm going to do that are going to help with this and just explain really quickly. And I know some people don't like MFL, and I know, can understand it doesn't have the slick user experience as other apps out there, but there is ways to make your life a lot easier and especially usable whilst you're doing this. So I'm going to explain just a couple of tabs that you will sort of live in and use. And this is the desktop version, but you can also load this onto your home version. Now, the first thing I would say is I recommend using something like Google Chrome, because if you sign into your phone on Google Chrome, you can actually bookmark the league here, and then when you sign in onto Google Chrome, you can on your phone, you can just find your bookmark that way. It's so much easier. If you bookmark your leagues on MFL, so that could be your eliminator leagues, that could be any leagues you're on, that's a much quicker way of just being able to find your league and go through and get things set up. And you could even leave that tab open on your phone if you're wanting to draft on the go, etc. The quickest way to navigate your leagues, there is a tab here that says My Leagues. So you can see here I've got a number of leagues for 2022 in here in terms of some leagues that I'm in. You can see all the eliminators in there. Eventually my Scott Fishbowl draft will be in here as well. So if you want to navigate, if you're in here and you're setting a lineup during the season, you want to see how you get on with your eliminators, My Leagues is the quickest way just to flip through and just have a look at that. Now, the two areas you're going to live in this, forget the four commissioners because I'm in a commissioner setting in here. But the two areas the two tabs you're going to use more than anything in here is reports and for owners. Before I get into that, just to say that, when the Scott Fishbowl is set up, there will be some handy tabs here across the top on the desktop version. So you'll be able to navigate these quite easily, as well as there's also a lot of shortcut links. So very high up on the mobile version is something like this draft status. Draft report is a really quick way, or pre-draft picks. Pre-draft picks is where you can go in and actually set your queues as quickly as possible. So that's quite a good way of being able to pre-draft. But I'm going to show you another way to do that as well. So in terms of when you do this, it's quite straightforward. You'd be able to go into here and pre-draft, or the draft report will also tell you when you find your next pick, and you can select from there. But all the information you need, this because it's a commissioner setup, but this will have handy information and links in here. Scott's very good at having the necessary links to get to where you want to get to in the rosters tab. But if you really struggle with anything, the experience is really set down to two things: reports and for owners. For owners is things that you're going to do as a fantasy owner. So set lineups, add drops, waivers, draft. And that's effectively how it's set up. So in here, it's just draft because we haven't finished the draft. If I go into a different league, for example, I can submit lineup as trades, add drops, but trades isn't possible in the Scott Fishbowl, but add drops, etc. And there's waivers, etc., and things like that in there. So that's where you will live, and that's where you will go more often than not. But in terms of the for owners part, this is what it will look like pre the Scott Fishbowl. Now, my draft list is probably going to be the best friend that you have if you ever do your own set of rankings. So if you do your own set of rankings for the Scott Fishbowl, or you want to use an analyst's Scott Fish Bowl rankings, you can actually preload the Scott Fish Bowl rankings of somebody or yourself or tweaks, whatever you want to do, into my draft list. And then when I select franchise, again, I'm in commission mode, so this wouldn't happen, but I can actually go ahead. Let me just switch. Sorry, I'm going to switch to a different league and show you this. So you see here, the commission tab's gone. So look, my draft list, and I can actually copy and paste a draft list, and I can actually load this in. Or there's actually the import tab is where you would do that. So this is where you would copy and paste this list. So if you've got an Excel spreadsheet of all the players from a Scott Fish Bowl ranking list, you can actually go ahead and load this into here, and it will load up instead of the standard ADP, which will be what you would see if you were drafting and thinking, oh, well, I want to draft a kicker in the 10th round, and then trying to find the kicker tab and going through there. It will actually list to you your sort of pre-draft list. So it's going to have naturally like the highest scorers always available, and that will give you a much better way of viewing players, so you don't miss anyone off your list or your tiers. So it's a much better way of preparing before the Scott Fish Bowl is to load or preload a list. So for those of you that are sort of taking notes here, and I might be going a bit fast here, it's 4 owners and my draft list, and then import. And if you do that, you can go through and then you can edit that list. So if you want to edit 1 or 2 players, you can edit in there, or you can preload a whole list again, or you can just view it in there. So that's the first tip I would give to anybody before their Scott Fish Bowl draft, is to do that, and that will make life really, really easy. You can set preferences. This is if you wanted to set a certain player per round preference. I don't know anyone that does this, but that is available to you, and then it will help you when you do that to pull up the relevant players at the relevant rounds, etc. The most important part of the MFL setup is this. So it's in franchise setup. And this is really important because this is where people's biggest complaint is they can't find a way to draft quickly. And on their phones, it's a bit difficult to go in, find the league or bookmark it, and then find the right tabs. I'm going to take that headache completely away from you. So if you go into franchise setup, the first thing you need to do is you need to load in your email address. So quite a lot of times your name will be in here that Scott's loaded, and please, for Scott's purposes, do not change your name. He's preset that so he knows where everybody is and how to formulate, and he states many times, do not change your name. So if you're playing Scott Fish Bowl, do not change your name. I'm doing that on Scott's behalf. Any other league, I'll check your commissioner. But make sure your email address is in here, because it might not be preset. Scott might have loaded them in, he might not have done. If he hasn't, then that's the quickest way to really help you get up and running very, very quickly. And then what you need to do is go into contact info. So contact info, again, check that the email is in there. You don't need to fill the rest of this out. You can choose whether you allow your league mates to see your email address. I personally don't really mind. The important ones here, so these are like the preset things in Scott Fish Bowl. The ones that are really important are, well, most of these taxi squads not important. You can choose whether you want the weekly results via email, or you can find your way to check it. There's no trading, so you don't need trade proposals. You don't need league bait, etc. So you can choose to have free agency. I don't think injured reserve moves are very useful, but you can choose to have that. I don't want any spam from myfantasyleague.com. But the 2 most important ones are draft status update and when I'm on the clock for my draft. Now, some of you aren't going to want draft status update. That's going to tell you every pick. So what happens is it basically becomes an email draft. And so what happens is you will go through and have a league where you basically get an email saying player 1.06 has drafted Dalvin Cook, say, for example. But what's important, the reason you want these emails is it has a link to pre-draft and a link to the draft. So literally you get that email, and then this is why I say it's always important to do the on the clock one. I would have both. And the reason I would have both is I appreciate some people might get quite annoyed if they're not picking for 20 picks to see all the emails, but the reason you want to do it, you can always delete them if you're not that interested. I always like to see who goes anyway. But more importantly, because the Scottish Bowl timer doesn't go off when UK players go to bed, I can see the last one before I go to bed, and then I can go in there and I can pre-draft. So I'm not going to time out. I'm not going to miss a pick, and I can keep the draft moving overnight. So I'm not holding anybody up. So I can literally go in there and set my pre-draft and go from there, which is pretty cool. So yeah, draft status update, and when I'm on the clock, and this will send an email. Let me give you an example of what the email looks like. I'm just going to go onto a different tab and load it up. But in terms of, like I said, the reason you do this is it's just so much more useful, because you're not going to have to remember any league code. You're just going to have to remember, all you're going to have to remember really is that you're in a draft, and it will just pop up the email. So I've got the emails here. So I'm just going to drag it onto a different tab. So here's what the email looks like. So you'll get this email here, and then what you'll do is you'll be able to see who's been picked. And again, you've got the league address. So this tells you this, you just click this and that'll take you straight to the league homepage, but it's this link here for owners draft. So for example, here we've got the picks in there. And this is a good live example of how it could be used. And again, you can use this on your phone. So you can actually see in this draft, I'm on deck, and I've got the ability to set a queue now if I wanted to. And since I'm on deck, I know I only have to put 2 players in my queue. So I could just go ahead and put, say, Marvin Jones and Michael Harbin into my queue. But what's also really cool is I could actually do a wider queue. So I'm actually, let's do this for real. Let's do a real exercise. So I'm going to go with, and people go, oh, I can't see my team in here. Well, that's fine. If you click the link, 9 times out of 10, it will take you to either something like this, or it will take you straight to the roster. You can see here, it takes me to my league options. I go to roster, but 9 times out of 10, actually, the way it's set up by commissioners, you can actually set it and it goes straight to roster. So I think with Scottish, it happens and take you straight to this page. So you can see what we've got here. So I could literally go back to, just go back on my browser and go, okay, I can look at tight end here. So I can take Cameron Brait, or I can take, but I'm going to queue a few players here. So let's say, for example, I'm interested in, let's say a few different positions. Let's look at quarterback. Is there anyone in quarterback? There isn't anyone there that holds that much hope. So I'm just going to select a few players here. So let's do Boston Scott, Dennis Johnson, Keyshawn Vaughn. Right. And you notice I'm doing more than 2. I'm going to show you why in just a second. So look, even though I've only got 2 players really that I'm looking for, I could just do that. But look, I'm going to save these picks and I've just put a load of players in. And the reason why is because now it takes me to the following round, which is round 24. And look, I can hit this button here that says add all from the previous round, and it keeps the same queue. So if you're, and this is really good when you're picking like near the turn, because if you're picking near the turn, what you're able to do is basically set your queue twice quite quickly. You think, oh, let's say you've got 5 or 6 picks, you can set your queue, and you can also set it by position. So what I could have done there is done 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and I'm picking 6 picks, and I could come in here and then just start removing players and just going from there. So it becomes so much easier to do. And that's how, when you're on the turn, you can actually save a lot of time. So again, those emails look just like this. They will pop up, gives you the one link, takes you straight into the draft page, and then you can go ahead and start doing your clocks and your pre-drafts there. Another place you can find your pre-draft, I'll show you in a minute. Well, I've already shown you on the homepage, but there's even a third place. So if you're struggling, that you can bookmark as well. But this is why these emails are really important. This will really enhance your experience. Some people don't like emails getting bombarded to them. That's fine. You can turn the draft status update off and it won't tell you every pick. It will just tell you when you're on the clock. But you're not going to get to set those queues unless you go into the MFL and set those queues manually. Make sure when you're done, you hit save info. So it keeps all of that. And that's really all you need to know. From the other option here is just straight draft. And that will take you into, we haven't set the draft up in this league, but if I went into a league where we are drafting, I can just hit draft, and that's where I can actually do my pre-drafting as well. So I can actually pop in here and do a pre-draft if I wanted to as well. Reports, you're not going to need to do too much in here for reports, except for really rules. This will remind you on the starting lineup is league settings. So this will tell you how many you actually start and where all of that is. And then league scoring will tell you scoring, literally how all the scoring breaks down. This looks really complicated. It's so much easier. All you need to do is really pay attention to this last column and the first column. But if you're really unsure, there is that button for tests, so you can actually just look at what it looks like. But really, I think that's all you're going to use, because a lot of these are like prehistoric reports about, there's some guidance about who you should start using the data that's in MFL. It will tell you who starting lineups are, players, about latest stats, for example, is all in here, but people tend to use their own. I don't know many people that do use this. I'm sure there are some. And then obviously you've got your standings in here, and there's cool stuff in here like tiebreakers, etc. And the league ones, so the league is where you've got your draft results. So if you're thinking, I don't know who's gone off the board recently and I didn't set the emails up, I can actually go ahead and look at the entire draft results, so I can see who's been drafted where, so I can pay attention. But more importantly, this is also another place you can pre-draft. So you can see here in this draft, I've made a couple of pre-draft selections already, so I can just go ahead and edit those if I want to. But this is also another place. So that's just under reports and league. And that's really it. That is like the email part is probably the most important. But here's a couple of tabs. I hope this kind of debunks the myth that this is really a difficult system to use, because I don't think it's that bad once you're used to it. And like I said, there's some real ways like setting up those emails that will give you a really quick overview and a quick way of getting drafts done. So hope you found this useful. Please feel free to DM me at Murph_NFL with any questions, and I'm happy to help you go through with this. We can do a screen share, try and help you get these preferences set up so that you can really make the most of this. But cheers.